When he finally reaches out after a period of silence, it can feel like everything you were holding in suddenly rushes to the surface. The curiosity, the questions, the relief, maybe even the excitement. It all hits at once. And in that moment, your first instinct might be to respond immediately, to match his message with all the emotion you've been carrying, to finally say everything you didn't get to say. But this is exactly where most people lose the progress they made during the silence. Because if you respond from emotion, you step right back into the same pattern you worked so hard to break. You go from grounded to reactive, from clear to impulsive, and without realizing it, you give away the same energy that once created imbalance. That's why this moment matters so much. Not because he reached out, but because of how you choose to respond. You have to pause. Not to play games, not to create distance for the sake of it, but to center yourself. To remind yourself that his message doesn't change everything instantly. It doesn't erase the silence. It doesn't automatically rebuild the connection, and it doesn't define your worth. It's just a message. And how you handle that message sets the tone for everything that follows. Responding from awareness means you're not reacting to how you feel in the moment. You're responding based on what you've learned. You've had time to reflect, to grow, to understand the dynamic more clearly. You've seen what it feels like when you're not constantly chasing or seeking attention. And now you have the opportunity to bring that same awareness into this interaction. So instead of rushing to reply, take a moment. Read the message without attaching immediate meaning to it. Notice your emotions, but don't let them control your response. Because when you respond from a calm, grounded place, your energy is different. It's steady, it's controlled, and it communicates something without you needing to explain it. That you're no longer operating from a place of need. This doesn't mean you ignore him or act cold. It simply means you don't overextend yourself. You keep your response simple, balanced, and aligned with your self-respect. You don't pour out everything you felt during the silence. You don't try to recreate the connection instantly. You allow things to unfold at a pace that reflects your growth. Because the truth is, one message doesn't change the reality of what happened before. What matters now is not how quickly you respond, but how intentionally you do it. So take your time, stay grounded, and make sure your response reflects your awareness, not just your emotion. Once you've taken a moment to ground yourself and respond with awareness, the next challenge is just as important, maintaining balance. Because when someone comes back after silence, there's a strong temptation to overgive. You might feel like you need to keep the conversation alive. Ask more questions, explain yourself, or show extra interest so things don't fall apart again. It feels natural, especially if you care. But this is exactly where the old dynamic can quietly return. If you're not careful, overgiving creates imbalance. It puts you back in a position where you're doing more, investing more, and carrying more of the interaction than the other person. And when that happens, the connection starts to lean in the same direction it did before, one-sided, uneven, and dependent on your effort to keep it going. That's why matching energy is so important. Not to play games, but to protect your balance. Matching energy means you meet him where he meets you. If he sends a simple message, you respond with a simple message. If he takes time to reply, you don't rush to respond instantly every single time. If he shows effort, you acknowledge it, but you don't amplify it beyond what it is. You allow the interaction to develop naturally without forcing it forward. This approach does two things at the same time. First, it keeps you grounded. You're no longer operating from a place of trying to secure the connection. You're simply participating in it without overextending yourself. Second, it places responsibility back on him to contribute. Because now, the flow of the conversation isn't being driven solely by you. If he wants to continue, he has to show up. And this is where the real shift happens. When you stop overgiving, you create space for him to either meet you or fall short. There's no pressure, no expectation. You're simply allowing his actions to match his words. And that's what reveals his true level of interest. At the same time, matching energy requires discipline. There will be moments where you want to say more, do more, give more. You might feel the urge to fill in the gaps or keep things moving. But every time you hold back from overgiving, you reinforce something important. You remind yourself that your effort should be mutual, not one-sided. Because a healthy connection doesn't require one person to constantly prove their value. It grows through equal participation, where both people are investing, showing up, and contributing in a balanced way. And when you match energy, you give that kind of connection the chance to exist. So don't rush to give more than you're receiving. Stay balanced, stay aware, and let his effort meet yours naturally. When he reaches out after silence, it's easy to focus on the message itself, the words, the tone, the way he comes back into your space. It can feel meaningful, even reassuring. You might start thinking, maybe things are different now, or maybe he's realized something. And while that's possible, this is exactly where you need to stay grounded. Because words, especially in a single moment, don't tell the full story. Anyone can send a message. Anyone can say the right thing. But what matters is what happens after that message. This is where most people lose clarity. They take one conversation and turn it into a conclusion. They assume that reaching out means change, that attention means intention, that a few kind words mean consistency. But real change doesn't show itself in one moment. It shows itself over time. It shows up in patterns, in repeated effort, in actions that align with what's being said. So instead of getting caught up in what he says, start observing what he does. Does he follow up, or does the conversation fade again? Does he make an effort to stay connected, or does he disappear after a brief interaction? Is there consistency in how he communicates, or does it still feel unpredictable? These are the things that reveal the truth, not just a single message after silence. Observation requires patience. It means you don't rush to label the situation or decide what it means right away. You allow time to show you the pattern. You stay present, you engage, but you don't invest fully until there's something real to invest in. Because consistency is what builds trust, not occasional effort. At the same time, this approach protects you from falling back into old patterns. When you focus only on words, it's easy to get pulled back in emotionally. But when you shift your focus to actions, you stay grounded in reality. You see things as they are, not as you hope they'll be. And that clarity keeps you from overcommitting too soon. It also changes the way you respond. You're no longer reacting to every message with the same level of emotional investment. Instead, you're allowing his behavior over time to guide how much energy you give. If he shows consistency, you gradually open up. If he doesn't, you naturally pull back. There's no need for confrontation or over-explanation. His actions speak for themselves. Because in the end, intention is proven through consistency. Not through promises, not through temporary attention, but through repeated, reliable effort that doesn't disappear when it's inconvenient. So listen to what he says, but watch what he does, because his actions will always tell you more than his words ever could. After you've grounded your response and kept your energy balanced, the next step is something even more subtle, but incredibly powerful. It's about setting a standard without turning it into a speech. Because when someone comes back after silence, there's often a temptation to explain everything you felt, to lay it all out, to make sure they understand what their absence did to you. And while your feelings are valid, long explanations don't always create the respect or change you're hoping for. What truly sets the tone isn't what you say, it's how you show up. When you remain calm, composed, and measured in your responses, you communicate something far stronger than words. You show that your time is valuable. You show that your energy isn't something that's easily accessible without effort. And most importantly, you show that you've grown beyond the version of yourself that would accept inconsistency without question. Setting a standard through behavior means you don't overreact, you don't over-explain, and you don't try to force understanding. You let your actions reflect your expectations. If he takes hours to respond, you don't feel the need to reply instantly every time. If his effort is minimal, you don't compensate by giving more. You stay aligned with the level of consistency and respect you want to receive. This approach creates clarity without conflict. You're not accusing, you're not blaming, and you're not trying to control his behavior. You're simply showing what you're available for and what you're not. And that kind of clarity is powerful because it removes confusion from the interaction. At the same time, this requires restraint. There will be moments where you want to explain how you've felt, where you want to express everything that went unsaid during the silence. But not every thought needs to be spoken to be understood. When your behavior is consistent, when your responses are measured, and when your presence is no longer automatic, the message becomes clear on its own. And here's the truth. People don't just listen to what you say. They respond to what you allow. If you allow inconsistency, it continues. If you tolerate minimal effort, it becomes the standard. But when you quietly hold your ground, when you don't adjust your behavior to accommodate less than what you deserve, the dynamic begins to shift. Because now, if he wants access to you, he has to meet that standard. Not because you demanded it, but because your behavior made it clear that anything less won't hold your attention. So don't feel the need to say everything. Sometimes the strongest message is the one you show through how you choose to respond. Even as you respond with awareness, match energy, and quietly set your standard, there's one thing that keeps everything in balance: your ability to stay emotionally detached. And detachment is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you shut down your feelings or pretend the connection means nothing. It simply means you don't allow your emotions to control your decisions. When he reaches out after silence, it's natural to feel something. Maybe you're happy to hear from him. Maybe there's a sense of relief. Maybe old feelings resurface. That's human. But the difference now is that you don't let those feelings pull you back into the same pattern. You feel them, you acknowledge them, but you stay grounded in your awareness, because without detachment, it's easy to fall back into emotional reactions. You start reading too much into every message. You begin to expect consistency before it's been shown. You get excited too quickly, and when things don't match that expectation, you feel disappointed again. That cycle only repeats when your emotions lead your actions. Detachment breaks that cycle. It creates space between what you feel and how you respond. It allows you to observe the situation clearly instead of being consumed by it. You're no longer trying to control the outcome or secure the connection. You're simply allowing it to unfold while staying centered within yourself. And this changes everything about how you experience the interaction. You're no longer waiting anxiously for the next message. You're not overanalyzing every word. You're not adjusting your mood based on his behavior. Instead, you remain steady. Your focus stays on your own life, your own growth, your own peace. At the same time, detachment gives you clarity. When you're not emotionally pulled in, you can see patterns for what they are. You can recognize inconsistency without excusing it. You can appreciate effort without overvaluing it. You respond based on reality, not hope. And here's the important part: detachment doesn't push people away. It actually creates a healthier dynamic, because when you're not dependent on someone's attention, your energy becomes more grounded, more stable, more self-assured. You're no longer seeking validation. You're choosing whether something aligns with you. That shift is powerful. It puts you in a position where you're not trying to be chosen. You're deciding if you want to choose them. So stay connected to your feelings, but don't let them lead, because your strength is in your ability to feel without losing control. As you move through this process, responding with awareness, matching energy, observing actions, setting your standard, and staying emotionally grounded, you arrive at the most important realization of all. Not every return deserves a second chance. Just because he reached out doesn't mean anything has truly changed. And this is where your strength is tested, because it's easy to fall back into something familiar, even if that familiarity once cost you your peace. When someone comes back after silence, there's always a choice in front of you. You can reopen the door fully, hoping things will be different, Or you can pause and look at what's actually being presented now. Not what you hope it becomes, not what it used to be, but what it is in this moment. Because a message is not transformation. Effort over time is. This is why you have to be honest with yourself. Has his behavior truly shifted? Or is it the same pattern starting again? Is there consistency, intention, and respect, or just temporary attention? These questions matter because they determine whether you're stepping into something new or repeating something old. And if you notice that nothing has really changed, this is where your power shows. It's not in how well you can keep the conversation going. It's not in how understanding or patient you can be. It's in your ability to step back again even when it's difficult. Because walking away the second time requires more strength than doing it the first time. You now know what you're leaving behind, and you still choose your peace over the pattern. This doesn't mean you close yourself off or become guarded. It simply means you respect yourself enough to not settle for inconsistency. You understand that a second chance is not about giving someone another opportunity to repeat the same behavior. It's about seeing a different level of effort, a different level of awareness, a different level of commitment. At the same time, being ready to walk away doesn't mean you're expecting things to fail. It means you're prepared to protect your peace if they do. You're open, but not attached. You're present, but not dependent. And that balance is what keeps you from losing yourself in the situation again. Because in the end, your goal isn't just to have them back. It's to have something real, something consistent, something that doesn't require you to question your worth. So if nothing has changed, be strong enough to step back again, because your peace is always worth more than repeating the same cycle.